My husband invited me to a charity gala after telling me for weeks how excited he was for us to spend an evening together. I spent hours getting ready. I thought we were celebrating 18 years of marriage. Instead, before I even reached his table, I heard him laugh and casually introduce me with 5 words that shattered everything I believed about my life. That's my ex-wife. Long story. Except, I wasn't his ex-wife. I was still married to him. And he had absolutely no idea I was standing right behind him. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 44 years old, and until that evening, I believed my marriage was simply going through one of those ordinary seasons couples survive after many years together. Not exciting, not romantic, but stable, comfortable, safe. At least that's what I kept telling myself. My husband, Daniel Carter, was 47 and worked as the regional director for a national real estate investment company. His job required networking events, client dinners, charity functions, and business trips across several states. For most of our marriage, I admired how hard he worked. I believed every late meeting, every delayed flight, every canceled dinner. Because trust wasn't something I questioned. It was simply part of our marriage. We had been together for 21 years, married for 18. We raised one daughter, 16-year-old Sophia, who had inherited Daniel's blue eyes and, thankfully, none of his ability to hide his emotions. Sophia always knew when something wasn't right, even before I did. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Nothing about our life looked unusual from the outside. A beautiful 2-story home, weekend family dinners, summer vacations, Christmas traditions, neighbors who waved every morning, the kind of family people assumed had everything figured out. Maybe that was why it took me so long to notice the small changes, because they arrived slowly. Daniel became protective of his phone. He started taking calls outside. Business dinners became more frequent. He smiled at messages without ever explaining who sent them. Whenever I asked, the answers were always reasonable. It's work. A client. The office. Simple explanations, easy to believe, and I wanted to believe them, because believing was easier than questioning. About 4 months before everything fell apart, Daniel received an invitation to speak at an annual charity gala organized by several major business leaders in the city. He seemed unusually excited. "It's important for my career," he told me. "Lots of investors will be there." He asked if I would attend with him. I was surprised. He hadn't invited me to one of his work events in years. "I'd love to," I answered. His smile looked genuine. "I've missed having you beside me." Those words stayed with me. For weeks afterward, I imagined the evening. A nice dinner, music, maybe dancing. Something that reminded us of who we used to be before work schedules and responsibilities slowly replaced romance. Sophia was thrilled. "You two need a date night," she laughed. "I'll stay with Grandma." She even helped me shop for a new dress. After trying on what felt like 50 different outfits, we finally found one. A midnight blue evening gown, elegant without trying too hard. Daniel smiled when he saw it hanging in our bedroom. "You'll look beautiful." For a moment, he sounded like the man I married. The morning of the gala felt strangely peaceful. Daniel left early for meetings downtown. He kissed my forehead before walking out. "I'll meet you there around 7. I have to help with preparations." Nothing about his voice sounded unusual. Nothing warned me. Nothing suggested my entire marriage was only hours away from changing forever. Sophia spent most of the afternoon helping me get ready. She curled my hair, adjusted my necklace 3 different times, insisted on taking pictures before I left. "You look amazing, Mom." "I hope Dad cries." I laughed. "He better not ruin his speech," she grinned. "He'll probably spend half of it talking about how lucky he is." Looking back, that sentence hurts more than almost anything else. The hotel hosting the gala overlooked the Charlotte skyline. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Valets hurried from vehicle to vehicle. Inside, crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. Everything sparkled. Business executives, politicians, local celebrities, television reporters. It felt far more extravagant than I expected. A hostess checked my invitation. Mrs. Carter? Yes. Welcome. She smiled warmly. Mr. Carter arrived about an hour ago. I thanked her. The ballroom sat on the second floor. As I rode the elevator upward, I checked my reflection one last time. I wasn't nervous. I was excited. Excited to surprise my husband by arriving a little earlier than planned. I imagined walking over while he talked with coworkers. Imagined his face lighting up. Imagined introducing ourselves together. I carried that picture in my head all the way down the hallway. The ballroom doors stood partially open. Soft piano music drifted into the corridor. Servers moved between round tables covered in white linen. People laughed. Champagne glasses clinked. The atmosphere felt warm, inviting. I spotted Daniel almost immediately. He stood near the center of the room, surrounded by several executives. He looked confident, relaxed, happy. For a second, I simply watched him. There was something comforting about seeing him in his element. Then I noticed something odd. Standing beside him was an elegant woman around my age wearing a silver evening dress. She wasn't merely talking with Daniel. She stood unusually close. Close enough that her hand occasionally rested lightly on his arm. I assumed she was a colleague, nothing more. Business people often behaved that way. At least, that's what I told myself. I started walking toward them, slowly, carefully weaving between tables. I was only a few steps away when one of the men asked Daniel a question. So, when are we finally going to meet your wife? Daniel laughed. Not nervously, comfortably, like someone answering an ordinary question. He casually pointed across the room. Oh, you probably won't. The group laughed. Someone looked confused. I thought you said she came tonight. Daniel shrugged. Technically. He smiled. That's my ex-wife. The room chuckled. He took a sip of his drink before adding 5 words that echoed inside my head long after the music disappeared. Long story. We stayed friends. Everything around me stopped. The conversations, the laughter, the music, even my breathing. For one impossible second, I wondered if there was another woman behind me, another Emily, another wife, someone else he could possibly mean. Then the woman beside him smiled. I've always admired couples who stay close after divorce. Daniel nodded. It makes family events easier. Family events, divorce, stayed friends. Every sentence landed like another crack spreading through glass. No one corrected him. No one questioned him. Which meant he'd told them this story long before tonight. This wasn't an impulsive lie. It was his reality. At least, the reality he'd been living. I hadn't moved. I don't think anyone noticed me standing there except one waiter carrying a tray of champagne. He politely stepped around me, still smiling, completely unaware that my entire world had just collapsed in complete silence. Then Daniel looked up. His eyes met mine. I'll never forget what happened next. His confident smile disappeared instantly. The color drained from his face. His shoulders stiffened. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. For 3 full seconds. No one spoke. He knew. I knew. And suddenly, he understood exactly what I had heard. Daniel stared at me as though he had seen a ghost. The conversation around him faded almost instantly. His coworkers noticed the sudden change in his expression and followed his eyes until every one of them was looking directly at me. No one spoke. Not because they understood what had happened, because they sensed something had. I slowly walked the last few steps toward the group. Each click of my heels across the ballroom floor sounded louder than the orchestra playing in the corner. Daniel swallowed hard. Emily. His voice barely came out. I looked at him calmly, calmer than I actually felt. 18 years, I said quietly. And somehow, I missed the divorce. Several people exchanged confused glances. The woman standing beside him frowned. I'm sorry. She looked from Daniel to me. I thought... She stopped. because whatever she thought no longer made sense. Daniel forced an awkward laugh. "This isn't the place." "No," I replied. "It became the place the moment you introduced me as your ex-wife." The silence became almost unbearable. A tall man wearing a company badge finally spoke. "Daniel, I thought you said the divorce was finalized 3 years ago." 3 years. The number echoed inside my head. Not 3 months. Not recently. 3 years. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "It's complicated." I smiled for the first time, only there was no warmth in it. "No, it isn't. I'm still wearing the wedding ring you put on my finger 18 years ago." I slowly raised my left hand. The diamond caught the ballroom lights. "So unless I've been sleepwalking through divorce court, I think someone here has been lying." The room went completely still. The elegant woman beside him took a slow step backward. She looked at Daniel with growing disbelief. "You told everyone. You said she remarried." Daniel closed his eyes for a second. "Claire, please. Not now." Claire. So that was her name. She folded her arms. "No. I'd like to hear this." She looked at me. "Are you really still married?" "Yes. We live together. Our daughter is 16. Claire blinked twice. "You have a daughter?" I nodded. "Sophia." Daniel looked like a man desperately searching for an escape that didn't exist. His manager approached. "Everything okay here?" Daniel answered too quickly. "Just a misunderstanding." I looked directly at the manager. "There isn't any misunderstanding. I'm Daniel Carter's wife. I've been his wife for 18 years. And apparently, I've also been his ex-wife for the last 3. A nervous laugh escaped someone across the group before immediately dying. No one knew where to look. The manager frowned. "Daniel, what exactly is she talking about?" Daniel finally snapped. "Emily, can we please talk somewhere private?" I nodded. "Absolutely." Then I looked at everyone else. "I apologize for interrupting your evening. I had no idea my marriage had already ended." Several faces immediately turned toward Daniel. He couldn't even meet their eyes. Daniel led me into a quiet hallway outside the ballroom. The music became muffled behind the heavy doors. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed. "I can explain." I folded my arms. "I'm listening." He stared at the carpet. "It started as a harmless lie." I laughed softly. "There is no such thing." He rubbed his forehead. "When I joined the company, everyone asked why I never brought you to networking events. So? I said we had separated." I stared at him. "You erased your wife because it was easier than introducing her?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" He hesitated. "The executives. They're younger. They socialize differently. They don't usually invite married couples. So pretending to be single made things easier." The words landed harder than I expected. "So I became an inconvenience." "No. I didn't mean—" "You absolutely meant it." I remembered every invitation he had told me wasn't worth attending. Every conference, every holiday dinner, every company retreat, every award ceremony. He always said spouses weren't invited. Now I understood why. Because introducing me would expose years of lies. I looked directly into his eyes. "Does everyone believe you're divorced?" He stayed silent. "Answer me." "Yes." "Your boss?" "Yes." "Your coworkers?" "Yes." "The board?" He nodded. I felt my stomach twist. "How long have you been living this lie?" 3 years. 3 years. 3 birthdays. 3 anniversaries. 3 Christmas parties. 3 years of watching him leave home wearing his wedding ring, only to become someone else's version of himself the moment he reached work. I asked the question quietly. Is Claire your girlfriend? His silence answered before his mouth could. I closed my eyes. Not because I was surprised, because hearing silence hurt more than hearing yes. Finally, he whispered, "It's complicated." I opened my eyes. No. That answer doesn't work anymore. Before he could respond, the ballroom doors opened. Claire stepped into the hallway. She looked nothing like the confident woman from earlier. Her face had completely changed. She looked shaken. "I need to ask one question." She looked directly at Daniel. "When you told me your marriage ended because your wife wanted someone else, was that true?" Daniel said nothing. Claire nodded slowly. "I figured." She turned toward me. "I'm so sorry." I honestly believed everything he told me. He showed me photos, pictures of an empty bedroom. He said you already lived somewhere else. Every sentence made another piece of the puzzle fall into place. Daniel hadn't simply hidden his marriage. He had created an entirely fictional life. Claire opened her phone. "I think you deserve to see this." She handed it to me. It was a picture of Daniel, standing inside a beautifully furnished apartment, his arm wrapped around Claire, both of them smiling. The caption underneath read, "Finally building our future together." The date froze me. 2 months ago. The same weekend, Daniel had told me he was attending a medical leadership conference in Atlanta. I remembered that weekend perfectly. Sophia and I had spent Saturday repainting our kitchen. Daniel had called that evening saying he'd be back late Sunday because the conference schedule changed. Instead, he'd been here, smiling for photographs, planning another future. My hands began shaking, not from anger, from realization. How many conferences had never existed? How many meetings? How many delayed flights? How many business dinners? How much of our marriage had been built on stories instead of truth? Claire quietly took back her phone. I ended things the moment I realized. I won't be part of this. She looked at Daniel one last time. "I don't even know who you are." Then she walked away, without looking back. Daniel watched her disappear down the hallway. For the first time that evening, he truly looked afraid. Not because he'd been caught, because the two lives he'd spent years keeping separate had just collided, and there was no putting them back together. I reached into my purse, removed my wedding ring, held it in my palm for several seconds. Daniel's eyes widened. "Emily, please don't." I looked at the ring. 18 years. Thousands of memories. A lifetime reduced to a small circle of gold. Slowly, I closed my fingers around it. "I won't make a scene," I said quietly. "Not because you deserve kindness, but because I deserve dignity." I slipped the ring back into my purse. I'll wear it long enough to get home. After tonight, it no longer belongs on my hand. Daniel reached toward me. I stepped back. "Don't." His hand stopped in midair. Then my phone vibrated. It was a text message from Sophia. "Mom, did Dad love your surprise? Send me a picture together." I stared at the message for several seconds. A lump formed in my throat. Daniel looked over my shoulder and saw the screen. His face crumbled. He whispered, "I forgot." I looked up at him. "No, you didn't forget. You forgot about us a long time ago." Without another word, I turned around, walked back into the ballroom, picked up my purse, and quietly left the hotel. I never looked back. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Charlotte's streets were glowing beneath the orange light of the setting sun, but I barely noticed any of it. Every traffic light, every stop sign, every familiar road suddenly felt unfamiliar. I kept replaying the same 5 words over and over. "That's my ex-wife. Long story." Not because he had lied, because he had practiced that lie so many times it sounded completely natural. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I had stopped crying. Sometimes pain becomes so overwhelming that tears simply stop. The house looked exactly as it had that morning. The porch light automatically switched on. The flower beds I had planted last spring still lined the walkway. Nothing outside had changed. Inside, everything had. Sophia opened the front door before I even reached it. She smiled the moment she saw me. "You're home." Then she looked behind me. "Where's Dad?" I forced myself to smile. "He had to stay late." Her shoulders dropped. "Oh." I wanted to hear all about the speech. I hugged her tightly, longer than usual. She laughed. "Mom, I can still breathe." "I know. I just missed you." She looked at me carefully. "You've been crying." I quickly looked away. "I'm just tired." She didn't believe me. I could tell. But she didn't push. She had always known when silence deserved respect. That night, neither of us talked much during dinner. Sophia described a science project at school. She told me one of her friends had finally passed her driving permit test. She laughed about a teacher accidentally calling a student by the family dog's name. Normally, I would have laughed too. Instead, I nodded, smiled, pretended. Because I wasn't ready to destroy her world in one conversation. Not yet. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Daniel. I watched it vibrate across the kitchen counter. Once, twice, 3 times. Then voicemail. Seconds later, another call. Another voicemail. Then another. Finally, a text appeared. "Please answer." Another followed. "I'm coming home." I replied with only 4 words. "Don't come tonight." Almost immediately. "Emily, please. We have to talk." I placed the phone face down. I had spent 18 years listening to his explanations. Tonight, silence felt healthier. Later, after Sophia went upstairs, I walked into our bedroom. For the first time since we'd bought the house, the room didn't feel like mine. Daniel's watch still rested on the dresser. His favorite novel lay open on the nightstand. One of his jackets hung neatly in the closet. Ordinary things. Objects that had suddenly become evidence of someone I no longer recognized. I opened the closet. His business suits were lined up exactly the way I always kept them. Color-coded, pressed, perfect. Without thinking, I reached into one jacket pocket. Nothing. The next. Receipts, business cards, hotel key sleeves, mostly ordinary. Then, inside a navy blazer, I found another wallet. Not his regular one. A slim black leather card holder I'd never seen before. My heart began racing. Inside were 3 credit cards. None were connected to our joint accounts. One carried only his initials. DC. No family address. No emergency contact. Just a downtown mailing address I didn't recognize. There was also a membership card for an upscale fitness club. The address wasn't anywhere near our neighborhood. Why would Daniel join a gym 40 minutes away? Unless he wasn't living one life. He was living 2. I carefully returned everything exactly where I'd found it. Not because I wanted to protect him, because I suddenly realized something. If Daniel had been hiding this much, searching his pockets wasn't going to uncover the whole truth. I needed facts, not guesses. The next morning, Daniel wasn't home. He had texted sometime around 3 a.m., stayed at a hotel. "Please let me explain." No apology, just another explanation waiting to happen. After taking Sophia to school, I drove to work. Normally, bookkeeping settled my thoughts. Numbers behaved logically. They balanced. People didn't. Around lunchtime, my best friend Hannah walked into my office carrying 2 coffees. She'd known me since college, long enough to recognize the look on my face before I said a single word. "What happened?" I tried answering. Nothing came out. Instead, I started crying. Really crying. The kind that leaves your chest aching. She locked my office door, sat beside me, and waited. An hour later, she knew everything. Chicago, the gala, Claire, the fake divorce, the apartment. She listened without interrupting. When I finally finished, she asked only one question. Do you know everything? I stared at her. I know enough. She slowly shook her head. No. You know enough to leave. But do you know everything? The question stayed with me, because deep down, I already suspected the answer. No, I didn't. That evening, I decided to look at something I'd ignored for years. Our finances. Daniel always handled investments, not because I couldn't, because he enjoyed it. Every month, he'd simply tell me everything looked good. I'd trusted him, without question. I opened our online banking. Checking account, normal. Savings, normal. Investment account. Something immediately looked wrong. Transfers, small ones. $5,000, $3,800, $6,200. Again, again, again. None of them were labeled clearly, just electronic transfers. Over many months. I opened my calculator, added them once, then again because I couldn't believe the total. Nearly $92,000. I stared at the number. There had to be some explanation. Inheritance? Business investment? Taxes? No. Every transfer went into an account ending with 4 numbers I'd never seen before. Not ours. His. At that exact moment, another notification appeared. New login detected. Daniel. He had just accessed the account remotely. Seconds later, my phone rang. I answered this time. His voice sounded exhausted. Emily, don't move any money. I laughed bitterly. Interesting. That's your first concern? It isn't what you think. I've heard that sentence before. It's business. I interrupted him. Did your business require $92,000? Silence. Then, I can explain every transfer. I'm sure you can. I'll bring documents. I'll show you. I ended the call. The following afternoon, something happened that neither Daniel nor I expected. Sophia came home from school carrying her laptop. She looked strangely serious. Mom, can I ask you something? My stomach tightened. Of course. She sat beside me on the couch. I wasn't trying to snoop. But I think I found Dad. I frowned. What do you mean? She turned the laptop toward me. It was the company website. Their annual charity gala photo gallery had already been uploaded. Dozens of pictures, executives, award winners, sponsors. Then, one photograph froze me. Daniel stood smiling, Claire beside him, her hand resting comfortably on his arm. A caption underneath read, Daniel Carter and his partner Claire Mitchell, celebrating another successful fundraising season. Partner, not colleague, not guest. Partner, publicly, officially. Sophia whispered, Mom, why does it say she's his partner? I couldn't answer. She kept scrolling. Then another picture appeared. This one from last year's gala. The same 2 people, the same caption. Then another. 3 years, 3 different galas, 3 years of photographs, 3 years of the same lie. Sophia looked at me, her voice trembling. Dad told everyone she was his partner. For 3 years? I slowly nodded. She closed the laptop. For several minutes, she simply stared at the floor. Finally, she whispered something that broke my heart more than anything I'd heard in Chicago. I thought our family was real. I pulled her into my arms immediately. It was real. No. She shook her head against my shoulder. It was real to us. Then she asked the question I had been trying to avoid. Is Dad coming back home? I closed my eyes. Because for the first time, I honestly didn't know the answer. Sophia's question stayed with me long after she went upstairs. Is Dad coming back home? I had spent the last 3 days searching for answers, but that was the one question I couldn't honestly answer. Not because I didn't know what Daniel wanted, because I hadn't yet decided what I wanted. For 18 years, every major decision in my life had included him. Now, for the first time, I realized I would have to make the biggest decision of my life without trusting a single word he said. The following morning, I called work and asked for the day off. I wasn't sick, at least not physically. I simply couldn't pretend everything was normal anymore. After Sophia left for school, I drove across town to meet the attorney Hannah had recommended. Her name was Rachel Bennett, a family lawyer with nearly 20 years of experience. Her office wasn't glamorous, just a quiet brick building with a small waiting room and a receptionist who greeted everyone with the same calm smile. I appreciated that. Drama belonged in my marriage, not in my lawyer's office. Rachel listened without interrupting. She didn't gasp. She didn't shake her head. She simply took notes while I explained everything. The gala, Claire, the fake divorce, the hidden bank transfers, the company photographs. When I finished, she folded her hands. Emily, I've represented hundreds of divorces, but very few begin with a husband introducing his wife as his ex-wife. I managed a weak smile. I wish I could say it was creative. She nodded thoughtfully. The affair is painful, but legally, it isn't the biggest issue. I frowned. What is? She slid a legal pad toward me. The money. She explained that hiding marital assets during a marriage could significantly affect a divorce settlement. If Daniel had secretly used shared money to support another household, purchase property, or finance a relationship without my knowledge, the court would want a complete accounting. She looked directly at me. I need one thing from you. Anything. The truth. Even the parts that make your husband look better. I appreciated that. She wasn't interested in revenge. She was interested in facts. Rachel handed me a checklist. Every financial record, tax returns, mortgage papers, retirement accounts, insurance policies, investment statements, credit card records, business reimbursements. It seems overwhelming, she said, but paper tells the truth better than memory. I left her office carrying a folder and a strange sense of calm. For the first time since Chicago, I felt like I was moving forward instead of simply reacting. That afternoon, I returned home and opened the filing cabinet in Daniel's office. Everything was perfectly organized. Labels, folders, color-coded tabs, exactly the way Daniel liked it, which made it even stranger when I noticed one drawer was locked. Daniel had never locked that drawer before. I searched until I found the small key taped beneath the desk. A habit he'd once joked was too obvious for anyone to notice. The drawer opened. Inside were ordinary business files, warranty documents, insurance papers, old tax records, nothing unusual. Until I reached the very back. There was a slim gray folder with no label. Inside were documents I had never seen before. The first page made my heart race. Residential lease agreement. Tenant, Daniel Carter. Address, a luxury apartment in downtown Charlotte, not Chicago. Charlotte, only 15 minutes from his office. The lease had started almost 2 years ago. 2 years. I leaned back in my chair. Chicago hadn't been the beginning. It had only been where everything finally collided. The apartment wasn't temporary. It was fully furnished. Utilities included. Parking space assigned. Storage unit rented. The lease listed only one occupant. Daniel. Attached behind it were furniture invoices. Television, bedroom set, dining table, kitchen appliances. Someone hadn't been staying there occasionally. Someone had been living there, at least part of the time. I kept turning pages. Restaurant receipts, luxury grocery stores, dry cleaning, parking garage payments, all charged to the same hidden credit card. The total wasn't small. It was thousands of dollars every month. Money that had quietly disappeared while I believed Daniel was paying conference expenses. Then I found something else. A handwritten list. At first glance, it looked like ordinary notes, until I started reading. Change mailing address. Transfer retirement after divorce. Sell lake property. Move before school year ends. School year, not ours. Sophia's. He had been planning his future around our daughter's calendar. Not because he wanted to protect her, because it was convenient. I sat there staring at the page. This wasn't a man who made one terrible mistake. This was a man who had written an entire future before telling his family it existed. That evening, Daniel finally came home. He looked exhausted. His suit was wrinkled. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. For a brief second, he looked like someone carrying the weight of the world. Then I remembered. He had packed that weight himself. He noticed the folder on the dining table immediately. His face changed. "You opened my desk." "I opened our life." His jaw tightened. "You had no right." I laughed quietly. "No right? You introduced me as your ex-wife. You rented another apartment. You moved nearly $90,000. And somehow, I'm the one crossing boundaries?" He sat down heavily. "Emily, I never wanted to hurt you." I looked at him. "That's interesting." "Because hurting me required hundreds of separate decisions." He rubbed his forehead. "It got out of control." "No. You kept it under control for years. That's the problem." For nearly an hour he talked. He admitted renting the apartment. He admitted lying at work. He admitted dating Claire. But every confession came with an excuse. I felt trapped. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I'd fix everything first." Each explanation sounded less convincing than the one before it. Finally, I interrupted. "One question." He looked up. "When exactly were you planning to tell Sophia?" Silence. Again. Always silence. His eyes drifted toward the staircase. "I don't know." That answer hurt more than any confession, because it meant he hadn't forgotten. He had simply chosen not to think about her. Then I asked the question that had been growing inside me ever since Chicago. "Did you ever love Claire?" He stared at the floor. "Yes." The word landed heavily between us. "And did you love me while you loved her?" Another long silence. "I don't know." I nodded slowly. "Thank you." He looked surprised. "For what?" "For finally giving me one honest answer." Just then the front door opened. Sophia had returned from a friend's house. She froze when she saw both of us sitting across from each other. Neither of us spoke. She quietly walked into the kitchen, looked at her father, then at the folder, then back at me. "Dad," she asked softly, "were you really going to leave?" Daniel's eyes immediately filled with tears. He stood. I was confused. Sophia shook her head. "No. I didn't ask if you were confused. I asked if you were leaving." He couldn't answer. She nodded once. "I understand." Then she walked upstairs, closing her bedroom door gently behind her. No shouting, no crying, just quiet disappointment. And somehow, that silence was louder than anything either of us had said all evening. Daniel lowered himself back into the chair. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked completely defeated. Not because he'd lost an argument, not because Claire had left, not because work was beginning to ask questions. He looked defeated because he had finally seen the damage through his daughter's eyes. And there was nothing he could say to erase it. I closed the folder, looked across the table at the man I had spent nearly half my life loving. Then I spoke the words I had been quietly preparing myself to say ever since that night at the gala. "Tomorrow morning, my attorney will be filing for divorce." Daniel closed his eyes. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply lowered his head into his hands. For the first time, the reality of losing his family had become impossible to deny. Emily didn't sleep that night, not because she was crying anymore, but because her entire marriage suddenly looked different. She sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, replaying every strange moment from the past 3 years. Late-night phone calls, weekend business conferences, credit card charges she had never questioned. And now, a woman who believed Emily was already divorced. That wasn't a random lie. It was a carefully constructed life. Someone doesn't invent a fake divorce overnight. They prepare for it. The following morning, Emily called in sick to work. Not because she couldn't function, but because she needed answers. Real answers. She logged into their joint banking account. Normally, she never checked it. Daniel handled most of their investments. He always said, "I understand finances better." Emily had trusted him. Now she wondered why. At first, everything looked normal. Mortgage, utilities, school tuition, insurance, nothing unusual. Then she opened the investment account. Her stomach tightened. There were transfers, lots of them. Thousands of dollars leaving every month. 3,000, 5,000, 7,000. Always transferred into another account ending with the same 4 numbers. She had never seen that account before. Over 14 months, more than $142,000 had disappeared. Emily whispered, "What have you done?" She downloaded every statement, every receipt, every transfer history. Then she noticed another payment. Monthly rent. A luxury apartment downtown. The same area where the charity gala had taken place. She searched the address. Luxury Riverview Residences. 1-bedroom executive apartment. Monthly rent. $4,900. She had never been there. Yet Daniel had been paying for it for over a year. Her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "Daniel. Morning. Sorry about last night. Clients kept everyone late." Emily stared at the message, then typed back, "No problem. Hope everything went well." She smiled bitterly. The lies came so naturally now. An hour later, another message arrived. Unknown number. Emily almost ignored it. Instead, she answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice, soft, nervous. "Is this Emily Carter?" "Yes." "My name is Rachel." Emily froze. "Rachel. The woman from the gala. I think we need to talk." They agreed to meet at a small coffee shop halfway across town. Emily arrived first. Rachel walked in 15 minutes later, without the evening gown, without makeup. She looked younger, more exhausted, and deeply uncomfortable. Rachel sat quietly. Neither woman spoke for several seconds. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. "I owe you an apology," Emily answered calmly. "You didn't know." Rachel looked surprised. "You believe me?" Emily nodded. "I saw your face after I introduced myself." "You were shocked." Rachel slowly exhaled. "He told me you divorced 2 years ago." Emily closed her eyes. Exactly what she expected. Rachel continued. "He said the divorce had been difficult. He said you both stayed friends for your daughter's sake." Emily almost laughed. The story was incredibly detailed, too detailed to be invented in a hurry. Daniel had rehearsed this. Rachel opened her handbag. "I brought something." She placed several photographs on the table. Apartment pictures, vacation selfies, restaurant reservations, holiday dinners. Daniel smiling beside her. Dates. Going back nearly 18 months. Emily felt numb. She wasn't angry anymore. She was studying evidence, like someone reading a police report. Rachel looked ashamed. "I loved him. I believed every word. He talked about buying a house together." Emily remained silent. Rachel continued. "He said once the legal paperwork finished, you'd both finally move on." Emily quietly replied, "There was never any paperwork." Rachel's face turned white. "I know." She slid her phone across the table. "Read these." Emily scrolled through dozens of messages. Daniel. "The judge keeps delaying everything." Another. "Emily refuses to sign one document." Another. "Our lawyers are almost done." Every message built the same lie, month after month. Rachel whispered, "I wasn't trying to steal someone's husband." Emily finally looked at her. "I know." Both women had been manipulated, in different ways. Rachel reached into another folder. "There is something else." She handed Emily several printed invoices: furniture, television, kitchen appliances, bedroom sets, everything delivered. To the downtown apartment. Paid using Daniel's company reimbursement card. Emily recognized several purchase dates. One invoice matched the weekend Daniel claimed he was attending a medical conference. Another matched their wedding anniversary. While Emily had eaten dinner alone with Sophia, Daniel had been furnishing another home. Rachel's voice trembled. He proposed. Emily blinked. What? Rachel nodded. 3 weeks ago. He gave me a ring. Emily couldn't even process it. Rachel placed the ring box onto the table. I returned it yesterday. For several minutes, neither woman spoke. Finally, Rachel asked, "What are you going to do?" Emily answered without hesitation, "I'm going to protect my daughter." Rachel nodded. "And after that?" Emily looked out the cafe window, then quietly said, "I'm going to make sure the truth costs him exactly what the lies bought." That afternoon, Emily visited one person, attorney Sarah Mitchell. Sarah listened without interrupting. She reviewed every bank statement, every screenshot, every receipt, every message Rachel had shared. When Emily finished, Sarah folded her hands. "This isn't just adultery." Emily looked up. "What do you mean?" Sarah spoke carefully. "If these marital funds were used to support another household, the court will want to know." She pointed toward the bank statements. "And these reimbursements from his employer," Emily followed her finger. Sarah continued, "If those business expenses were false, your husband may have created problems much bigger than divorce." Emily slowly realized. Chicago. No, the charity gala was only the beginning. The affair wasn't the biggest secret. The money was. And somewhere inside those missing thousands, Daniel had buried a truth that could destroy everything he had spent years building. When Emily's attorney uncovered one hidden company file, Daniel's entire double life collapsed overnight, and the courtroom heard a truth no one expected. The next 6 months passed slowly, not because the legal process moved slowly, but because every single week uncovered another lie Daniel had buried beneath years of confidence. Emily no longer measured time by birthdays or holidays. She measured it by meetings with attorneys, financial reports, and court filings. Every document seemed to expose another piece of the man she thought she had married. One Monday morning, attorney Sarah Mitchell called. "I think we've found something important." Emily drove to Sarah's office immediately. The forensic accountant was already there. Several folders covered the conference table. Sarah slid one toward Emily. "Remember those transfers into the private account?" Emily nodded. "We tracked where the money went." She opened the folder. There it was. Apartment rent, luxury vacations, designer jewelry, private school tuition. Emily frowned. "Tuition?" Sarah nodded. "For another child." Emily slowly looked up. "What?" The accountant spoke carefully. "We found payments made every semester to a private elementary school." Emily's heartbeat became uneven. "There are enrollment forms." Sarah placed another document on the table. Father's name, Daniel Carter. Mother's name, Rachel Morgan. Emily couldn't breathe. Daniel hadn't only built another relationship. He had built another family. Emily stared at the papers for nearly a minute. Finally, she whispered, "Sophia has a brother?" Sarah nodded gently. "It appears so." The little boy was 6 years old. His name was Ethan. Daniel had been supporting him quietly for years. Rachel had never hidden Ethan from him. In fact, Daniel had proudly listed himself as Ethan's father on every school document. Emily closed her eyes. Not because Daniel loved another child. Children are never responsible for adult choices. What broke her heart was realizing how many birthdays, school plays, and family weekends he had skipped with Sophia, only to spend them somewhere else. That evening, Daniel came to the house to pick up Sophia. Emily asked him to stay after Sophia went upstairs. She quietly placed the enrollment papers on the kitchen table. Daniel looked at them, then at Emily. His shoulders dropped. For the first time, he didn't deny anything. "I was going to tell you." Emily almost smiled. You've been saying that for 18 months. He rubbed his face. I never meant for this to happen. Emily answered calmly. It happened because you kept choosing it. Daniel sat down, looking older than Emily had ever seen him. I loved both lives. Emily looked at him in disbelief. You loved the parts of both lives that made you feel good. You expected everyone else to carry the pain. He lowered his head. She continued. You weren't living two lives. You were abandoning one while pretending it still existed. He had no answer. A month later, the divorce trial finally began. There were no dramatic shouting matches, no surprise witnesses running into the courtroom, only facts, bank statements, expense reports, apartment leases, company reimbursement records, phone messages, photographs, one by one. The evidence painted the same picture, a man who had carefully planned a future built on deception. Daniel's attorney argued that the money had been personal earnings. Sarah immediately presented the transfer history. Every dollar had first entered their joint marital accounts. Only afterward had Daniel secretly redirected the money. The judge looked directly at Daniel. Were these expenditures disclosed to your spouse? Daniel quietly answered, No. Were these business expenses? Another pause. No. The courtroom became silent. Then came the company investigation. Daniel's employer had completed its audit. Several trips listed as medical conferences had never existed. Hotel receipts didn't match conference schedules. Client dinners had never happened. Mileage claims were false. Apartment rent had been hidden inside reimbursement requests. The company representative testified calmly. Daniel had violated company policy repeatedly. His employment had already been terminated. He would also be required to repay every fraudulent reimbursement. Emily watched him sitting alone. The same confident executive who once controlled every room, now unable to meet anyone's eyes. Rachel testified briefly. She explained that Daniel had convinced her his marriage had already ended. He had shown fake divorce paperwork. He had promised they would soon marry. She apologized publicly to Emily. Emily simply nodded. She had forgiven Rachel months ago. The real betrayal had never belonged to Rachel. It belonged to Daniel. Finally. The judge delivered the decision. Emily would keep the family home. Daniel would compensate the missing marital funds. Sophia's education would remain fully funded. Daniel would continue paying child support. His retirement accounts would be divided fairly. Most importantly, the judge specifically noted Daniel's financial deception when determining the settlement. Years of carefully hidden lies had become part of the official court record. Outside the courthouse, reporters weren't waiting. There were no television cameras. Real life rarely ends that way. Instead, there was only a quiet parking lot, cold afternoon air, and Daniel standing beside his car. He looked at Emily one last time. I thought I could keep everyone happy. Emily answered softly. No. You wanted everyone to keep you comfortable. There was a difference. A very expensive difference. Nearly 1 year later, life looked completely different. Emily had expanded her bookkeeping business. She now employed 2 assistants. Most of her clients came through referrals. People trusted her. Not because of what had happened, but because of how she handled it. Quietly, professionally, honestly. Sophia had started smiling again. The sadness hadn't disappeared overnight. Healing never works that way. But she laughed more. She invited friends over again. She talked about college, about driving lessons, about the future, little by little. The house felt like home again. Daniel continued attending therapy. His relationship with Sophia slowly improved, not because she forgot, but because he finally stopped making excuses. Every apology was followed by changed behavior. That mattered more than words. Trust wasn't rebuilt in weeks. It was rebuilt through consistency. One Saturday afternoon, Emily was cleaning the attic. She found an old family photo album. Inside was a picture from 15 years earlier. Daniel had his arm around her. Sophia sat on his shoulders laughing. For a long time, Emily simply looked at it. Then she carefully placed it back into the album. She didn't destroy it. because those memories had been real. The lies came later. One mistake many people make after betrayal is believing every happy memory was fake. Emily knew better. The happiness had existed, so had the deception. Both could be true. That evening, Sophia joined her on the back porch. "Mom?" Emily looked up. "Do you ever hate Dad?" Emily thought carefully before answering. "No. I hate the choices he made." Sophia nodded. "I think that's how I feel too." Emily smiled gently. "Hate keeps you connected to the person who hurt you. I'd rather be connected to my future." Sophia leaned against her shoulder. For several quiet minutes, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the sunset. Months earlier, Emily had believed hearing Daniel introduce her as his ex-wife was the worst moment of her life. Now she understood something different. That painful moment hadn't destroyed her. It had awakened her. Sometimes the truth arrives in the most humiliating way imaginable. But once it arrives, it sets you free from living someone else's lie. Daniel thought Emily would never hear those words. He never imagined that one sentence would expose an entire double life. In the end, he didn't lose his marriage because Emily discovered the truth. He lost it the day he decided that deception was easier than honesty. And Emily didn't win because Daniel fell. She won because she chose dignity over revenge, truth over denial, and peace over pretending. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making someone regret losing you. It's building a life so full of peace that you never again need their approval to be happy.